One woman, one love. There were no empty seats available at the Gulshan Shadkam pastry shop. A few customers were standing in a corner eating ice cream, and a few more were buying pastries. Mojgan and Pern, excited and disheveled, entered the pastry shop. They had come a long way to see Arka Gadas. They were coming to this shop for the first time. They wandered around the shop. Only some dried-up cookies were left in the shop windows. Squeezing Pern's hand, Mojgan pointed at the man sitting behind the cash register and whispered, "That must be him, the murderer Arka Gadas." She raised her voice, "They don't have any pastries left, let's have ice cream." Their faces were pale, and they both stood before the cash register. Mojgan ordered 2 ice creams and searched for the money in her bag. Arka Gadas was a short man with grey hair. He had a purple satin half-buttoned shirt on. A gold chain was shining on his grey chest hair. He had a protruding belly, and his face was red. He looked at the girls, took the money from Mojgan, wrote down 2 fruit-flavored ice creams, and turned to the other customer asking him, "When are you going to have cream puffs?" Arka Gadas replied, "They are all sold out. We won't have any more until tomorrow." The shop was on a corner, and the customers used both entrance doors. The girls took their ice creams and waited in a corner for empty seats. They were watching Arka Gadas. Pern said, "I can't believe this. How can someone kill a person and go on selling sweets and ice cream? Not one person too." During those few days after the murder of Gulshan Khanum, nobody talked about this second person. Arka Gadas's presence attracted people's attention more than the murder of those 2 people. 2 seats became available, so the girls rushed over and took them. Their mouths were wide open and their ice cream spoons were in their hands. The customers were watching Arka Gadas. They would turn their looks away from him and put their ice cream in their mouths every time he raised his head. A young man sitting next to the girls turned to his friend and said, "He tells everyone he killed them with an axe and later turned it in and was released. His business picked up the day after the crime. That's his elder son selling pastries." Every head turned toward the shop windows. The son was young with a round face and light hair. He had a shirt on with green and pink stripes. He was putting the cookies in a box. He weighed them, closed the box and gave it to the customer. The customer was staring at the boy. Pern said, "He looks so much like Gulshan Khanum." A young man turned to his wife and said, "Arka Gadas has forbidden the boy to close the shop even for an hour. He came to the shop to sit behind the counter the day after the crime." Mojgan and Pern were 2 high school students who attended Gulshan Khanum's hairdressing class twice a week. The beauty salon didn't have a signboard, and Gulshan Khanum never charged for her services. The neighborhood girls would come to her in the afternoon, and the woman would teach them all she knew. This was the girls' first visit to the Gulshan Shadkam pastry shop. Arka Gadas had put his wife's name on the shop. That might not appear so strange these days, but 20 years ago, when they first came to this town, it took people by surprise. In the old days, it was not customary for people to put their wife's or daughter's name on their shops. But Arka Gadas, disregarding people's gossip, put Gulshan's name on his shop and added Shadkam, prosperous too. That was what he always wished for her to be, a prosperous Gulshan. Later, however, he was suspected of putting this name on his shop to lure Parviz down there to kill them both. 2 years after he bought the pastry shop, he purchased the haberdashery next door, knocked down the divider wall, and enlarged the pastry shop. Although he continued to bring ice cream and some pastries from outside, he built a kitchen underneath the shop and bought a few ovens and refrigerators. In the beginning, every once in a while, Gulshan Khanum liked to come to the shop and sit next to her husband and crack seeds. She would wear her white floral chador one, and cover her bleached golden hair under it. She would sit next to the cash register and crack handfuls of watermelon seeds while watching the street. Sometimes she brought along her children as well. She would bundle up her 2 sons, and bring them to the shop to sit there and watch the street, the cars and the people while cracking seeds. She never paid much attention to the people around her, not even her kids or Arka Gadas, who loved her so much that he had put the shop in her name. He had bought her a piece of land next to the water supply company, and an orchard at the end of the dirt road by the river. Gulshan was his whole life, but the woman always ignored him. She was in a world of her own, somewhere far away. Sometimes she even talked to herself, but nobody suspected she was crazy. She was always well dressed and nicely made up. It was as if she was always waiting for a dear guest. The woman was tall and fair-skinned, with high cheekbones and almond-shaped brown eyes. She liked to display her white neck by wearing low-cut blouses. Every day, she would spend hours in front of the mirror trying different hairstyles, wearing her hair down or up, putting in a pin or curling it. She covered her high forehead with a big piece of curled hair, to make it look nicer. When she wanted to look modest, she gathered her hair behind her head, leaving 2 curls on each side to make her look more beautiful. She wore lipstick, big round earrings, shiny nail polish and a colorful dress. She would, however, always wear her chador, a white floral chador. Later, when the boys were grown up, she signed up for a swimming class, then a cooking class, a baking class, and after that, classes S for embroidery, beadwork and lacework. Later, she took a beauty class. She liked this class more than the rest. She worked for her pleasure. The neighborhood girls would come to her beauty salon. She would put on sad music and hum along with the song. She wasn't talkative, she listened most of the time. But whenever she talked, she liked to end her sentences with, "I swear on the life of my 3 kids." The girls would laugh and say, "But Gulshan Khanum, don't you just have 2 boys?" She would then laugh and say, "I don't know, I was just talking." She would grow quiet, stand in front of the mirror and check her makeup. Mojgan and Pern always came to her place together and left together. One day Mojgan had asked Gulshan Khanum, "Do you know Atefa, Akbar Aqai's daughter? She has run away from home." Raising her eyebrows, Gulshan Khanum asked, "Who is Atefa?" "The same girl who once came here with us, and you gave her a haircut." "Oh yes. I see. She got married secretly. Now they have arrested the boy." Akbar Aqai would not give his consent to release him. And Atefa beats herself up and cries. Pern had said, "Is that fellow worth all this trouble and ruined reputations?" Mojgan had said, "All this happened because of love, something you find in poems." Gulshan Khanum had laughed and said, "Should one be a poet to feel all that? I didn't understand what it meant when I was young. But to be honest, now I envy whoever is in love. I enjoy listening to people talk about love. I feel happy whenever I hear people are in love. I laugh with joy. I seldom laugh. But at moments like this, I go on laughing. I enjoy talking and thinking of love. To me, love is like 2 souls in one body." Mojgan said, "It would sound compelling if Atefa said all these things. But it is different when someone older talks about love with such passion." Gulshan Khanum had sulked and replied as if talking to herself, "It has nothing to do with age. My heart will never get old because it has never been fulfilled. I swear on the life of my 3 kids." The girls and Gulshan Khanum had laughed. But if Gurdas had heard this, he would have said, "Did you mention that again? When are you going to forget it? When?" And Gulshan Khanum would have answered, "Only when I die. I will forget it when I die." In the boy's absence, Aqai Gurdas would ask, "Aren't these 2 your sons?" Gulshan would answer, "They are my sons, but what about my other child who has never seen a mother?" Gurdas would burst out angrily, "You don't know if that child is still alive or not." "I know he is alive. He will come one day and take me away." Perhaps because of what she had said that afternoon when Gurdas entered the shop, and his son said, "A stranger has come several times since this morning asking for you," his body temperature increased and then suddenly dropped. He shivered and asked with a frown, "Who was he? What did he want?" The son said carelessly, "He didn't introduce himself. He said he is an old friend of yours. He also knew mother. He asked about her. He said he knows you from Tehran, from Shahpur Avenue." It seemed like yesterday. The house on Shahpur Avenue has a big green yard and a pool of water surrounded by moss. 2 verandas were on each side of the yard, with rooms occupied by different families. Parviz's room was in the basement next to the lavatory. He was a schoolboy from the provinces. He was tall and innocent. Every Friday he brought his clothes to the yard, sat by the pool, washed them unskillfully and hung them on the trees to dry. In those days Gadas was broad-shouldered and of medium height. He had a thick black moustache. He did traditional wrestling and had trained muscles. In winter, he wore a navy blue woolen coat with 8 buttons in front. He used to put on a hat with a brim. In summer he wore a short-sleeved shirt with a tie or a floral scarf around his neck. His wife Gulshan Khanum was very young and had 2 kids. They had the best room in the house. Gadas was hot-tempered and liked to intimidate the people around him. He would also get into physical fights with his wife. He had divorced her twice and made up with her after a week. Gulshan Khanum had grown used to the man's character. She would wear her white chador daily and sit by the pool to wash the dishes or the clothes. In the evening, she used to sweep the veranda, spread a carpet on the floor, and put her children there. Parviz would return from his classes in the afternoons and go to the faucet by the pool. He would wash the teapot and his tea glasses, then bring his tea tray to sit under the apple tree and drink it. He would open his book and study. Back then, he didn't know he would marry Gulshan and raise her child alone. Tall and strong-looking, with a youthful face, Parviz was now standing at the door to the shop. He had a blue shirt on, a sky blue jacket, and a pair of white pants. His shiny combed hair looked attractive, with a few strands of grey hair on his temples. He looked calm. Gadas was sitting behind the cash register, with a wide-open, slackened mouth. The last time he saw Parviz was 20 years ago at the local police station. He had hired people to beat him up. Dried blood had covered Parviz's face. He had made the boy commit to divorcing Gulshan Khanum. But the boy wanted to keep the child. The police officer had threatened him, "You are a child yourself, what do you want a child for? Do you want me to notify the authorities at your school to expel you?" Then Parviz sat on the chair next to the police officer and started to cry. The officer had come out of the room and had said to Gadas, "He has agreed to divorce the woman but he wants the child. We can't force him to do more than this." And Gadas had responded, "The hell with him. I don't want to see him and his child anymore." Later, everything changed for Gadas. He married Gulshan Khanum again, quit wrestling, and shaved off his moustache. He sold his shop in Tehran and wandered to different cities without any trace. Finally, after many years, he returned to his hometown and started the Gulshan Shadkam pastry shop. He spent every day of the 20 years apprehensive about Parviz's possible return to them. And now, that moment had arrived. Parviz was standing in front of him. As if he had rehearsed this moment before, Parviz said louder than usual, "Hello, don't you know me?" and stretched out his hand toward Gadas. Gadas got up, looked at his son quickly and shook hands with Parviz. Their hands were hot and feverish. "Yes, yes. We haven't seen you in a long time." Parviz sat behind a table, and the boy brought him ice cream. He recognized the boy because of his resemblance to Gulshan Khanum. From the long silence, the boy realized he had to leave them alone. Parviz said, "I wanted to talk with Gulshan." "What talk after 20 years?" "I have to tell her about her child." Gadas didn't say anything. He opened his account book and pretended to be busy. When the boy returned, he felt the heavy and suffocating silence in the room was making his heart stop. He didn't know that in a few months, he would have to stick an axe in this strange man's chest. He had begged his father, "Not mother, I can't kill mother." And father had said, "You just help me, I will do the rest." The boy had asked with pale lips, "What will happen to my brother? What is he going to do?" The man had thought of everything. "I will explain everything to him when he returns from his military service." During the interrogation and at the court he had repeated several times, "I killed them both. With an axe while they were in bed." On the night of the crime, the 3 of them were at the orchard by the river. A light was glimmering from far away. It was foggy and dreamy. The mountains and the trees were hidden behind the fog. The sound of the river close by could be heard. The thick autumn trees looked lonely and scattered despite being next to each other. The black and white hunting dog stared at them and waggled his tail. "We'd better stay at the orchard tonight." And they had stayed. The boy knew about the plan, and the axe had been sharpened. Gadas didn't even spend one day in prison. The next day he went to his shop to sell sweets and ice cream. People came in groups to watch him. Parviz had told Gadas, "If it weren't for the shop's name, Gulshan Shadkam, I would never have been able to find you." And then he had added with laughter, "Maybe you never minded my coming back." On the first night of Parviz's return, the father and son turned off the lights of the shop and pulled down the shutters, while Parviz was standing next to them, waiting to visit Gulshan. Gadas had told him with a frown, "It's late." And Parviz had answered firmly, "I won't stay for long. Just a few minutes." Their house was not close, but the three of them walked to the house. They were silent on the way. At the door the boy knocked. Gulshan opened the door. Gadas entered first and announced, "We have a guest." After him his son entered, then Parviz. Gulshan was dumbfounded. She couldn't believe her eyes. She said, "Is that you, Parviz? Where is my son?" And she sat down right at the door, shocked, with a lump in her throat. All these years, the man had undertaken raising their son with the hope of one day finding the woman. Parviz said, "He is a university student in his second year of medical school in the USA." He looked at the woman, who was now middle-aged but well-made. There was no trace of youth left in her, but she was all the man had imagined, and all that he had imagined of love during the years he had searched for her. She looked more like a mother than a lover. But beyond her looks, he could find the essence of love and that which the man had remembered of her. She was his first and last love. The woman spread all the photos of his son, who had been taken during the different stages of his life, out on the table. Parviz said, "I didn't think I could find you this year, otherwise I would have brought him." The woman looked at the photos passionately. The son resembled the Parviz of those years. Parviz was a provincial student whom his father supported. He was the same age as Gulshan. He didn't have any jobs, and was not of an age to get married. Gadas had asked Parviz to marry Gulshan, so that he could remarry her after the third time he had divorced her. 2. Gadas had even paid for all the expenses of this marriage of convenience. All this happened because Gadas had one day given the documents for the third-time divorce of the woman, and 200 tomans as her dowry to the landlord to hand to Gulshan. That day, the children's crying had made Parviz come out of his basement door to stand and watch. The other neighbors had all gathered around Gulshan. After that day, Parviz had dared to bring fruit and watermelon seeds for the woman, and leave the homemade cookies and jams his mother had sent him behind her door. The woman would watch the boy through her window, and come out to sit by the pool to crack seeds. It was agreed that the marriage would last only one day, but Gulshan refused to get a divorce. Parviz never set foot in Gulshan and her kids' room. The woman would come to the basement to clean and cook for Parviz. Unlike Gadas, Parviz was not macho and rough. He used to listen to the woman. He always talked to her with passion and excitement. He had an olive complexion, messy hair, a small elongated nose and narrow lips. He used to talk with all his heart and soul. He used to look at the woman with admiration. He would encourage her to go to school. He used to bring her books. The woman was exposed to another world, and a different kind of man. Gadas would come to see his children in the afternoon. Whenever he brought up the subject of divorce from Parviz, the woman would remain silent until one day she said, "Don't even talk about divorce, I am pregnant." That day Parviz got his first beating. Gadas was waiting for him to return from school, and they ended up at the police station. But they had to wait for the woman to deliver her child. The day the woman came home from the hospital, Parviz was forced to commit at the police station to divorce the woman. But he wanted to keep the child to remember their time together. Gulshan put all the photos together. The last one was of the boy among his friends. She asked Parviz, "Where are you staying tonight?" "I have a room at the hotel. I am not planning to stay more than a few days. Let's go to the orchard with Gadas tomorrow." The next day, the three of them went to the orchard. Later they did that every day. They would sit on the veranda in the orchard, and listen to the roar of the river flowing beneath. They would listen to the cawing of the crows. They would watch the fog that would grow dense and thin as it danced. They would smell the freshly baked bread. Parviz would stir the wood in the stove to relight the fire. His joyful face would look feverish from the heat of the fire. The bubbling noise of the teapot on the wood stove and its steam was a reminder of life, love, and kindness, which the three of them had been denied all these years. Parviz had said he had not come to stay long, but he did. Gulshan had said she only longed for her child, but that was not all she longed for. Gurdas had promised his son to assume all the responsibilities after the murder a few weeks later, at the same orchard in the same room.